that the thinking that comes out of Washington is all top-down bureaucratic management thinking. It's all pyramid with the all-seeing eye at the top, and down below are the people who take orders. There's a terminology in political philosophy for this. It's called the leader principle, or das Führerprinzip, if you use the correct language, or the language from which that really derived. The leader principle, you look to a leader figure above you, and he gives the orders. So we have the leader figure in the White House, and we have the leader figure in the Department of Homeland Security, and we have the leader figure in the governor's sphere, and we have the leader figure maybe in your county government or whatever. And the last people you think of as the leaders are the sheep at the bottom in the pen, right? Whereas the Constitution looks at it the other way around. These people, as you go higher up, are simply representatives of those folks down there. If you have the leader principle, then of necessity you have to have the follower principle. You can't have leaders without followers, right? So the leader principle obviously contradicts the whole concept of popular sovereignty, contradicts the underlying principle of the Constitution. And that, of course, is the reason that you find these militia structures, which existed for so long, and which the Constitution says are necessary, no longer exist. You go into any state today and you will find the best that you will find is some vestigial group that still performs some very small part of the militia functions that you can trace back to the colonial period. And I think it's because those folks at the time. So we go to a statute today, if you want to look this up yourself. Title 10 of the United States Code, which covers a lot of the military laws of the country. Section 311. Refers to the basic militia structure as Congress imagines this. And Congress says the militia of the United States shall be organized in the following way. Stop right there. Militia of the United States. What's that? Is that a constitutional term? No. Constitutional term is the militia of the several states. A little difference there, right? You don't have to be a Harvard graduate to see that difference. So Congress couldn't even figure that much out. All right? They couldn't even get the name right. Or else they're creating something that the Constitution doesn't provide for. So it's either inaccurate or it's unconstitutional or both. I would say both. Okay. Then Congress says, well, this militia of the United States is divided into two parts. It's divided into the organized militia, that's the National Guard, and the naval militia. And then it's divided into the second part, which is the unorganized militia. Now, the first thing you know about the National Guard and the naval militia, that had nothing to do with the militia. That's not a militia structure at all. Is everyone required to be a member of the National Guard? How many members of the National Guard are here? None. Okay. So it's voluntary, not universal service. Do all those National Guardsmen buy their own guns and take them home and keep them there? No. Heaven knows they keep them in an armory somewhere. Right? Under the control of whom, ultimately? The Standing Army. Okay? The National Guard is an adjunct of the Standing Army, the regular armed forces. It's the large reserve component for the regular armed forces and was invented for that purpose. Now, if that's the militia, then we have a direct contradiction because the militia is supposed to be the check and balance against the Standing Army. And the militia powers in the Constitution are separate from the Army power, the Navy power. So something's wrong here. I'll leave that aside. You go to the second part of that statute, which talks about the unorganized militia. Who's that? Well, that's everybody else. That's everyone who isn't a member of the National Guard or the naval militia in the unorganized militia. What did I just tell you? In the history of the militia, there's no such thing as unorganization. They organized everybody. They put them into different categories within the militia, and some they exempted in certain ways, but they organized everybody. Even the poor women who couldn't vote had to pay. They were more interested in money in those days anyway, right? Even the poor women had to pay. So everyone was organized. And, oh, by the way, today, now that women have the vote, they can perform other functions. They get something else to do. Maybe they can carry guns, they get something else to do. Everyone was organized. And if you look at the power that Congress has been granted by the Constitution, remember, Congress has no powers except what the Constitution grants it. Congress was a creation of the Constitution. It had no pre-existing powers. What is the power related to the militia? It is the power to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia. Start with that first word, organizing. If it has the power to organize, does it have a power to unorganize? I mean, are we all speaking English here? If you have a power to organize, does that mean you have a power to unorganize?
Yes.
And to leave unorganized? No. Well, I know We'll leave you with something. Of course not. And there's a simple constitutional principle that if they are granted a power, then that power does not include a converse power to defeat the original power. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? If you're told to do X, you can't say, well, I'm going to do minus X. Right? And this is given to me by X, right? But this converse way. So here we have this statute that is basically self-contradictory and absurd, besides being unconstitutional. Now, I can't blame Congress alone for this, because where I live, Virginia, they have exactly the same structure. They have the organized militia, which includes the National Guard, the Naval Militia, and a thing called the Virginia Defense Force, which is a group of people that take over for the National Guard. They control the armories and so forth. The National Guard folks leave Virginia, so it's a part of the National Guard. And then there's everybody else, the unorganized militia. And what's particular in that statute, the governor is given the authority to call out the unorganized militia under certain circumstances. There's a laundry list of emergencies. He can call it the unorganized militia. And it stops right there. How's he supposed to do that? Does he call me? Does he send me an email? Does he come knock on my door? Am I supposed to stand in a street corner and find out? What's supposed to happen? Nothing. Now, what are they doing in Virginia and in many other states? They're setting up bureaucratic organizations, civilian organizations, eventually tied to or paid by, in some way connected to the Department of Homeland Security, to perform some of these functions. The CERT teams, all right? The domestic FEMA organizations, state FEMA organizations, the same great organization that went into New Orleans after Katrina and did such a wonderful job. All right? They're creating entities of one kind or another that are performing functions that look like and would be part of the militia function if the Constitution were properly applied, but they're being run by these little groups of bureaucrats, all eventually beholden to Washington because that's where the money comes from. All right? So it's not as if they don't realize that these things have to be done because they're attempting to do them, but they're being very careful not to do them through the constitutional methodology, because that would put the power in whose hands? Not theirs. All right? We can't name, I can't name these folks who are going to have it, but it won't be those people, and they know that. All right? Now, let's get to the money point. Homeland Security, you can think of millions, literally, of threats. But there is clearly one that undermines a free society very, very quickly and very, very thoroughly. And that would be the breakdown of the monetary and financial systems of the country. Because we run on a supposed free market economy. Now, I grant there a lot of government intervention, but basically it's a price-structured economy. It's not actual socialistic planning. That kind of economy depends upon a monetary system that is relatively stable. If the monetary system is fluctuating this way and that way with unpredictably and by manipulation and so forth and so on, the prices that the market generates in response to this are going to, in some way or other, falsify the real needs for particular goods and services. And eventually you're going to have some kind of major breakdown in the production side of the coin. You look at the present crisis that's going on in the markets, and you can trace this right back to the monetary mechanism. Primarily, actually, it's a monetary mechanism set up in 1862. I don't want to go back that far. Let's just go back to 1913, the Federal Reserve System. Everything that's happening now is a direct result, cause and effect, from the operations of the Federal Reserve System. None of this bubble, or a very small amount of this bubble, could ever have been blown up. The derivatives bubble, the mortgage bubble, any bubble you want to pick since World War II. If the Federal Reserve System had not been there, capable of generating potentially an infinite amount of current bank credit and currency based upon nothing but debt. This is what we call a debt currency system. They make currency based upon debt, as opposed to currency based upon assets. And given that money is supposed to be the most liquid of all commodities, in a sense they flip the thing entirely around, because debt is really not liquid. Right? Debt you have to wait until somebody pays it. You're always worried that it won't be paid.